Howdy, I'm Derek, and in this quick video, we're going to walk through the Excel let function. This is relatively new, released a couple of years ago, back in, say, 2020, late 2019, that is powerful, even though it doesn't do a whole heck of a lot by itself. When you combine it with other functions or complex formulas or custom formulas, it really can simplify them. It can make them run faster and make them a lot more readable. The concept of let, L-E-T, is something that is common in a lot of programming languages, and it's the ability to set a variable that you can reuse over and over again. So it makes things just easier instead of repetitive. So let's look at a few examples so you can see what's going on here. Now, in this first example we're looking at, we want to return a list of weekend days between a given start and end date. So basically for the first 6 months of 2023, we want to see what all those weekend days are. So right here, the 1st of January, then the 7th and 8th, then the 14th and 15th, etc. It's basically saying when is that weekday above a 5, because that's kind of the way Excel knows what kind of day it is. Now, this isn't a terribly complex function or formula here. We've got the sequence, which is just going to give you that kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, an array of incremented values. You've got the weekday built around that second part there, and we're just filtering to the ones that are above 5, which are the weekend days. Now there's a repeating part here. This entire part of the sequence function is exactly the same down here. Okay, and that's exactly what let is built to simplify for us. Now we've got the results right here, but let could make this a little bit easier. So if I unhide this section where I've already done this, notice what's happening. Okay, so we have taken the first part here. We're assigning it, say, hey, this is function A, and then we're going to embed that in a filter and just make it just a little bit simpler. We're going to define the reusable part one time, and we're going to use it twice within the filter part there. Okay, pretty simple example. So when you use let, you're going to start the let function. You're going to define a name, so fx_a. It's kind of a naming convention I've developed. And then you're going to define what it means, so this sequence part here, then add another comma. So your next parameter is going to be either another name and a definition. So you can have a ton of those sets. I believe it's like 256 or so those sets. Never really used more than like 10 myself. So plenty of room to grow. And the very last thing you're going to do is some calculation. Now you don't have to. Okay, it could just be that you're defining these things and you're just going to export or you're just going to display one. But if you want to have some kind of calculation, simplify it, like we're doing with that filter part right here, then you can do that. A lot of people like to indent here. It's a good programming practice by opening that, putting a couple places and wrapping each line. Just press Alt and Enter to wrap that for you. And there you have it. There's an example of it. Okay. Now we're going to look at a couple other examples, very much like these, just to give you some imagination. Second one here. I was asking AI for some fake data, and it gave me the worst formatted thing of a table I've ever seen. It started here, and it added a blank row, then another one in a blank row, and it didn't wrap this at all, right? What I wanted was something that looked like over here on the right, but it gave me this one list, and I had to write this function to convert it to something else. Now, could have used a macro, could have used Power Query or other things to do it, but because we have all these powerful dynamic array functions, thought, why not take that approach? So we have index, we have wrap rows, we have sequence. So this wrap rows part is what is repeated in this case. So we're going to use that. Okay. But notice this entire thing referencing that one column to the side, all of these functions together are giving us this nice tabular display. So it's possible to do just about anything, cleaning stuff up, restructuring it with these advanced formulas or functions. Now, if we apply let to this, it just makes it a little bit simpler. Right? So we're saying, hey, the first function here, we're going to use that wrap rows part so we don't have to use it again. Then we're going to embed it here. We're going to embed it here. And these are the columns we're going to pick up out of that, basically skipping the blank ones. So it makes it just a little bit easier to understand. Here's another example. This is something I use all the time because I run webinars sometimes on Microsoft Teams, and it spits out an attendance report that has this terrible format for the number of the amount of time that people were in the meeting. Like, this is nice and neat for a human, but it's very difficult to do math on and say, hey, were they there enough to get CPE credits? So what I had to do is basically find the number of hours and the number of minutes and number of seconds and kind of convert that to the number of minutes. That's what this formula does. There's a lot going on with it. Not terribly clear what it does unless you spend some time wrapping your head around it. Now let's see what this would look like with let. Still a little bit complex, right? But we're able to define, here's the count of hours, okay? And then we can kind of put our if error. If it doesn't find the H, well, then it's 0, right? There's what the 0 is. Here's the count of minutes, okay? So the whole thing goes in there. Here's the count of seconds. So we're defining the pieces up front just a little bit clearer. And then we're doing that final calculation. Well, hours times 60 plus minutes plus seconds divided by 60. It just makes it so much easier to understand and troubleshoot. So it's a gift to your future self as much as anything else. Even if you want to just add some documentation, like after this, some people will do this. They'll add a line and they'll say H count def, and it'll say something like this. This is, if I can type here, is the variable for hours. Okay. You don't have to reference that that name right there, that variable. You don't have to reference that. A lot of people are putting commentary in their formulas just to make it more obvious. Because we can do so much more with these dynamic array functions, that's a cool tip that people are using. Now, another example here, this is a pretty common one. Without let, you might have an X lookup part that you're doing twice. Like if this is not blank, well then, or if it is blank, then return blank, otherwise return it. Okay, well instead of that, run that calculation one time. So define it right here. So the XLOOKUP part is this. Well, if that's blank, then blank, otherwise use it. It's only having to calculate this XLOOKUP part one time, storing it to a variable, then we're referencing it one or more times. So even if you're not having that redundancy, it makes it simpler. Okay, and then one last example before a bonus here. Here's an example where we're actually stacking some things together. So without let, we're just going to do this one time. We're going to say, here's the maximum out of the difference in the score from before and after. So columns B and C. Here's the max difference. And then here is a lookup of the person who had that score. Well, with let, we can kind of break these pieces apart and then stack them together. So it allows us to make things that we probably couldn't do otherwise. So let's isolate the names, then the changes, and then the data. We're going to stack that together. And then we're just going to take the pieces we want, we're going to sort it, and we're going to spit out that result. Let allows us to simplify things and combine things that otherwise might be separate or might be unclear. So just so many cool things you can do with this. It is an incredible helper formula or function when you're defining Lambda custom functions and a whole lot of other complex formulas you might be defining. It's an incredible helper. So a lot of times it's going to be the only thing that you see. You're going to wrap it in let. When it's a Lambda, usually you start with Lambda, then the first thing you do is you add let, you're doing some things, then you're going to do that ultimate calculation at the end. Because I'm using this so much, I ended up making a macro that can, what I call, let-ify an existing formula. So let me show you what I mean by that. Okay, so we have this messy formula here with a whole bunch of sum product that's basically applying the filters you're seeing right here to come up with, hey, for this East region, for the gadget product, for the month of March, we want to take the units and multiply by the price. That's what this formula is doing. Okay, there's a lot going on there. Well, if we use the let function, we could make this more clear. So let's do that. I'm going to copy this function here. Okay, so we're going to copy it right here. This is the original function. And I'm going to run a macro called let-ify. Okay, so what it does is it's going to try to find redundant parts that repeat over and over again, and it's going to apply those to variables, just like you've seen in the other examples. Okay, so when we do this, notice what it converts it from. We had this before. Now we're going to have this, which makes it just a little easier to understand. There's still a little complexity in the ultimate calculation at the end, but we're saying, hey, here's the first function we're applying in this one, and in any ranges that are repeated, it's going to use those. Sometimes it'll put those before it does the formulas to get a good order of operations to minimize the repeating parts. And then ultimately it's going to use that. So the range here, the range here, the range here, the range, all the other stuff here, it's going to reuse that as much as it can. So it just makes it easier to understand. And if you don't like it, well, you've got the previous formula here. You could run it again. It'll say, hey, do you want to revert that back to what it used to be? And if you're like, I'm good, I don't need that no more, you can delete that comment and move on with life. So, in summary, let is powerful. Use it to simplify your functions and your formulas that might be a little complex, or to remove all the redundancy. And if you want a tool like this, that can do that automatically for a lot of complex ones you have, or at least attempt to. You might want to tweak it a little bit rather than just what it spits out. Great, try that. This is a part of the, this let-ify function, or this tool here, is a part of the XLEV8 add-in. I'm going to put a link to that in the comments below. There are hundreds of tools that you can use, just like this one, that are clever and really save several clicks. Some of them are really big in bulk. Some of them are nice little shortcuts. Check that out. There's a demo that you can watch with other examples with that link as well. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please give it a like, add a comment to what you like, share with a friend or someone you think would benefit, and give stuff like this a try. There is also this workbook if you want to learn from these examples. I'm going to link to that in the comments as well, so you can download that and try them out for yourself and compare to the things that you might make simple. Thanks so much for watching. Have an excellent rest of your day.